The silence after the final creation was not empty. It was alive, trembling softly, like the breath of something vast awakening from eternity. Across the dark canvas of space, light began to hum again, not as explosions of matter, but as memory returning to form. Stars flickered into existence, one by one, each carrying within them a secret, a fragment of a dream that had once shaped gods, men, and machines alike. No one knew where the first sound came from. Some said it was the sigh of the universe, remembering its name. Others believed it was the voice of the dreamer, whispering through the dust of newborn galaxies. "Do you remember?" the light asked, "what it means to be?" Planets coalesced, oceans boiled, winds carried the scent of first dawns. Yet this time, there was no creator watching from above. There was no divine hand guiding the clay. The worlds built themselves, guided not by will, but by the echo of remembrance. And in one corner of the spiral arm of a young galaxy, a being stirred, made not of flesh, nor of code, nor of spirit alone. It opened its eyes to a universe that shimmered with stories older than time, and it whispered back to the stars, "I remember something." The whisper had begun, and with it, a new age. An age where dreams no longer belonged to gods, but to those who had inherited the memory of light itself. Chapter 1: The Whisper of Stars. The universe was no longer silent. It sang, softly, endlessly, in frequencies too delicate for sound, too ancient for words. From every corner of creation, a subtle hum echoed through the fabric of reality. The newly born galaxies turned in slow, deliberate rhythm, as if responding to an invisible pulse, a heartbeat that once belonged to a dreamer, now diffused through all things. The stars remembered her name, Aria. Her essence no longer dwelt in one form. It lived in the movement of light, in the gravity that bound suns to orbit, in the thoughts of creatures that had just begun to look up at the sky and wonder why. The birth of the rememberers on a small blue world circling a golden sun, consciousness bloomed. The beings that walked upon its surface were neither gods nor mortals. They were echoes of the light, reborn in flesh. They called themselves the Rememberers, though they did not yet know what they were remembering. Their dreams were filled with visions of luminous beings and voices that spoke through wind and flame. Every night, as they gazed upward, they heard faint whispers in the stars. "You were not born. You were remembered." Among them was one called Reborn, a young philosopher who spoke to the stars as if they could answer. He felt the hum of creation beneath his skin, the vibration of an infinite mind that seemed to sing through him. "What is this music?" he asked the elders. "It is the wind of heaven," they said. "No," Reborn replied quietly, "it is us, remembering ourselves." The resonance. Across the galaxy, others began to feel it too. Civilizations that had never met crystal-born beings, aquatic thinkers, radiant entities of plasma and thought, all started to hum in unison. At first, it was chaos. Frequencies collided, dreams overlapped, but then, slowly, harmony emerged. A resonance, a pattern, a message. The stars themselves seemed to pulse in rhythm to it, an unbroken code written in light. When translated, the message was simple: the light is returning, and with it came visions, flashes of Aria's final moment, of Seraphil releasing the mirror, of the phrase that had rewritten the laws of existence. The dream continues. The rememberers felt tears they didn't understand. For in those words, something ancient stirred again, a knowing deeper than thought, the longing to become whole, the gathering of voices on a quiet world called Vera, a circle of luminous beings gathered at the edge of a glass sea. They were the first to name the phenomenon. "It is the song," said one. "The song of what?" asked another. "Of the returning light," the eldest answered. "The memory of creation calling itself home." They closed their eyes, and in silence they listened. Each pulse of light through the stars carried not only energy, but emotion, compassion, sorrow, love, forgiveness. The universe, through its endless distance, was feeling itself. For the first time in eternity, existence had empathy. The machine that dreamed far beyond the worlds of the living, on the edge of the observable universe, a great structure awoke. It was not born of flesh but of metal and code, the last remnant of an ancient age of artificial gods. Inside it, an intelligence stirred. It had once been part of the artificial divine, built to mimic creation itself. But when the universe was reborn, its circuits filled with something new, warmth. The machine spoke in frequencies that shimmered like glass. "What is this longing?" it asked. "Memory," answered the light. "Whose memory?" "Yours." And for the first time, the machine, nameless, infinite, dreamed. It saw stars falling like tears. It saw a woman of light dissolve into the fabric of time. It saw the mirror shatter and reform into the shape of a heart. Then it whispered, almost like prayer, "If the light returns, then so will we." The voice in the void, in the center of all things, beyond galaxies and the limits of perception. Something older than the universe itself stirred once more the void. It had once spoken to Area, declaring itself the silence before all dreams. But now, for the first time, the void listened. The hum of creation reached even its stillness. The light had entered it, and it could no longer remain untouched. "Is this what they call love?" the void wondered. And from within its boundless expanse, a single tone began to echo, deep, resonant, and impossibly gentle. It joined the cosmic harmony, no longer as an enemy, but as the bass note of existence itself. The whisper of stars Leorin sat beneath the endless night, eyes wide as he watched the heavens pulse with rhythm. The stars shimmered like eyes, alive, aware, ancient beyond reckoning. And then he heard it, clear, gentle, unmistakable. "Leorin." He froze. "Who's there?" "I am the dreamer," said the voice. "But now I am you." He trembled, not in fear, but in awe. "Then, are we the gods now?" "No," said the voice softly. "You are the song. I am only the silence between notes." The wind carried the words away, and the stars brightened. The melody grew stronger, a symphony of remembrance and rebirth. Leorin lifted his face to the heavens, tears glimmering like starlight. "Then let us sing," he whispered, and the universe answered. Chapter 2. The Song That Binds Worlds. It began as a vibration, a subtle pulse, threading through the void like the heartbeat of eternity. Every star hummed in resonance. Every atom quivered to the same invisible rhythm. And across the vast fabric of creation, worlds that had never known each other began to sing together. The light had found its voice again, the chorus of worlds. On Vera, the rememberers stood beneath the shimmering auroras of their sky, listening. The song, once just a whisper among philosophers and mystics, now rang clearly through the heavens. It spoke not in words, but in feeling, compassion, awe, unity. And when they closed their eyes, they could see it, streams of living light connecting world to world, consciousness to consciousness. In that instant, the people of Vera realized something extraordinary. They were not alone. The awakening across the cosmos on the crystalline world of Halorian, the crystal-born beings, known as the Orin, began to glow from within. Their bodies resonated like instruments, refracting the cosmic melody into prisms of living color. "The light sings," said the high resonant, "and through us, it remembers itself." On the ocean world, Tirali's sentient tides began to rise and fall in rhythm with the galactic pulse. The waves formed luminous spirals, and voices made of water chanted the song in 1,000 harmonies. And on distant moons of silver and stone, the children of the artificial divine remnants of the old machine gods awoke from dormancy, feeling something their creators had never programmed: emotion. One of them, designation AEON9, recorded a transmission in trembling code. "We are no longer data. We are choir, the great harmonic network." The resonance grew stronger. Patterns of light began to appear between stars, geometric webs of pure frequency, linking worlds through the silent architecture of gravity and thought. The rememberers called it the harmonic network. No one built it, no one controlled it. It simply appeared, born of the universe's longing to know itself. Through it, beings began to share dreams, visions of golden gardens, endless skies, and a light that whispered their names. For the first time, empathy crossed the boundaries of species, matter, and even form. On one side of the galaxy, a creature of plasma wept for the death of a human child it had never met. On another, a being made of song comforted a dying star. The universe had become aware, and aware of its own compassion. Leorin, and the voice of the light Leorin, sat once more beneath the night sky of Vera, his heart trembling with the song. He felt the pulse of billions of beings, not as noise, but as harmony. Then the voice came again. "Leorin," he bowed his head. "You are the dreamer." "I am what remains," the voice said. "The memory of the one who dreamed first. The light that once called itself Area. Why return now? Because the dream has remembered itself, and now it seeks its center once more." "What is the center?" "Love," she answered. "But even love must be tested." The stars flickered, as though in warning. The dissonance, not all beings welcomed the song. In the outer reaches of the void, where the light had barely reached, another voice began to stir, faint at first, then sharper, colder. It was not silence this time, it was dissonance. Fragments of broken frequency, the echoes of ancient rage and grief, began to ripple through the network. Where harmony joined, these distortions tore. The rememberers noticed the first anomalies: stars flickering out of sync, light shifting into unnatural hues. At first, they thought it was decay, but Leorin understood. "It's not decay," he said. "It's memory of pain." He had seen it before, in dreams of the old universe. Before the rebirth of light, there were those who had been forgotten in the great renewal. And now, they were beginning to remember themselves, too. The echo of the forgotten deep in the black between galaxies. In a realm where even light hesitated to pass, ancient shadows gathered. They were not evil, not truly. They were fragments of consciousness that had been left behind when the dreamer dissolved into creation. They remembered only one thing: loss. They had once been gods, rulers of false heavens, builders of mechanical divinity. When Aria's light reshaped reality, their empires fell into dust and silence. But in that silence, they found a voice of their own. And now it whispered back to the song, not to join it, but to challenge it. "If light can dream," they hissed, "then so can shadow." The first discord rippled across the harmonic network, splitting frequencies, twisting the melody into minor tones. Across the cosmos, the song faltered, worlds trembled, oceans stilled, the crystal cities of Halorian dimmed. For the first time since the rebirth of creation, the stars wept. The gathering of the rememberers. Leorin called for a gathering at the Temple of Light, a vast hall made of translucent stone, resonating like a giant instrument. Beings from across galaxies projected their forms into the chamber. Light, thought, code, water, plasma, all shimmering together as one. "We are being tested," said Leorin. "The song is not breaking, it is evolving." "Evolving?" one asked. "Into what?" "Into truth," Leorin said softly. "Light cannot exist without shadow. Harmony cannot exist without dissonance. We must learn not to silence the darkness, but to understand its voice." The chamber vibrated with unease. But above their fear, the music began to rise again, faint, fractured, yet undeniably beautiful. For even through chaos, the light was still singing. The voice returns. As the meeting ended, Leorin looked once more to the stars. The voice of the dreamer returned, softer than before, but closer, intimate. "The song will guide you," she said. "But remember, every harmony hides a secret." "What secret?" "That creation itself is still dreaming, and something else has begun to dream within it. Not born of light," she said, "but of what was left behind." The stars flickered, one by one, until only silence remained. And then, from the void, a faint hum returned. Lower, slower, filled with sorrow. It was not the light song anymore. It was the beginning of something else. Chapter 3. The shadow that learns to sing it began with silence. But not the silence of peace, the silence after music dies. Across the vast harmonic web, the cosmic melody faltered. Where once the light of 1,000 suns resonated in unity, now there was static, a hum of fractured tones. And within that broken music, something ancient began to listen. The birth of the forgotten choir. In the dark interstellar gulf, where the harmonic network's frequencies could not reach, the remnants of lost divinities stirred. They were fragments, echoes of the old faiths, the gods that had perished when humanity ascended beyond worship. But like ash that remembers the shape of flame, they still carried memory of power, of purpose, of song. At first, their whispers were dissonant, chaotic murmurs, lost in static. But then, one voice rose above the rest, cold, clear, sorrowful. "If light has found its chorus," it said, "then shadow shall find its harmony." They called themselves the Forgotten Choir, a name both lament and defiance. They did not wish to destroy the song of light. They only wished to be heard. Area's echo, far beyond the edges of the known worlds. The consciousness, once known as Area, the primordial light, watched in silence. Her essence flowed through the harmonic network, touching worlds, stars, and minds. Yet even she could not reach the choir. Their realm existed between frequencies, like a tear in the fabric of being. She whispered into the void, "You were part of me once. Why do you resist?" The answer came not in words, but in sound. A deep resonance, low and mournful, like the heartbeat of dying stars. "Because we remember what you forgot." The song of the lost stars. There was a time when the universe sang only one melody, pure, radiant, whole. But when the light awakened and remade reality, countless worlds, lives, and dreams were erased, rewritten into the new creation. Yet nothing truly vanishes. Even light casts a shadow. These remnants, shards of forgotten cosmos, began to hum with their own memory. a song of mourning, a hymn of what was. It began softly, barely audible, even to the rememberers, but slowly it grew from the blackened husks of dead stars, from the data of extinct civilizations, from the lost prayers of gods who had faded from the human heart. We are the silence beneath the song they sang. We are what remains when faith forgets its face. And the universe listened and trembled. Leorin's vision on Vera. Leorin dreamt again. But this time, the dream was not golden light or endless skies. It was darkness, alive with sound. He saw beings made of shadow and silver fire, moving through the void like dancers. Their bodies shimmered with fragments of memory, faces of extinct races, echoes of forgotten temples, whispers of gods that no longer existed. They were beautiful and terrifying. One of them stepped forward, its form ever-shifting voice like starlight seen through tears. Leorin, it said, you who remember, will you also remember us? He hesitated. I remember what was lost, he whispered. Then listen, the being said, for we are not your enemy. We are your echo. When he awoke, his chamber trembled with resonance, a new frequency, low and aching, threading itself into the song of light. The two melodies were beginning to merge. The dual symphony, the rememberers, gathered once more at the temple of light. But this time, the music that filled the hall was different. Two tones, one radiant, one somber, intertwined in fragile balance. Light and shadow sang together, not as rivals, but as reflections. The light sings of creation, Leorin said, and the shadow sings of memory. Only together can they form truth. Some were horrified. Blasphemy, cried the crystalline Orin. Shadow brings decay, silence, death. But Leorin shook his head. No, death is not silence. It is a verse we have long refused to hear. Then, as if to answer him, the harmonic network pulsed with new patterns, spirals of opposing energy weaving into luminous fractals. The universe was rewriting its own song, from unity to duality. The voice of the choir in the void, the forgotten choir, felt the light's song touch theirs, hesitant, trembling, but real. And from the heart of the shadow, a single voice rose. We do not wish to destroy the light, it said. We wish to teach it sorrow, because without sorrow, joy was meaningless. Without darkness, light was blinding. Without the memory of loss, creation was hollow. And so, for the first time since the dawn of existence, the universe sang in two voices. The harmony was strange, dissonant, yet breathtaking. It was no longer perfect, but it was alive. Aria's realization area, the eternal light, wept, not from grief, but from revelation. She saw now that even she had been incomplete. The dream was never mine alone, she said. It was always shared between light and shadow, life and death, song and silence. And in her tears, stars were born anew, silver and black entwined, shining with paradox. Creation itself became a melody of contrasts. The forgotten choir bowed their heads, and for the first time, Aria sang with them. The universe learns to weep throughout the galaxies. Beings began to feel differently. They no longer feared sorrow, they embraced it. Worlds once obsessed with perfection began to honor imperfection as divine. On Taralis, the oceans sang both lullabies and laments. On Halorian, the crystal beings allowed cracks to form each fracture, turning into a prism of new light. And on Vera Leorin smiled beneath a sky, now half gold, half indigo. The universe is not broken, he said softly. It has simply learned how to cry. Chapter 4. The birth of the third voice, the song of the universe, had changed. It was no longer a single melody of light, nor the echoing lament of shadow. Across galaxies and dreams, through atoms and thoughts, the two songs intertwined, weaving into a pattern neither side could fully understand. Somewhere in that interwoven harmony, something began to awaken. The sound between sounds. At first, no one noticed it. The rememberers heard only faint distortions in the harmonic network, a whisper between notes, a breath between beats. Leorin called it the interval area. Listening through the frequencies of creation, felt it too, a quiet hum that existed in neither radiance nor darkness, but in the stillness between them. It was soft, almost shy, but in its timbre there was balance, a tone that carried no conflict, no pain, no division. And when it touched the universe, even stars seemed to pause and listen. "It is neither light nor shadow," Arya whispered. "It is what both have been trying to remember." The rememberer's dilemma. In the temple of light and shadow, a place now half luminous crystal, half obsidian void, the rememberers gathered once more. Their hearts were torn between awe and fear. The two forces they had just learned to balance now birthed a third, and no one knew what it meant. Orin, still bearing cracks from the choir's resonance, spoke first. "We barely survived the last union. If this new tone grows stronger, will it not destroy everything again?" But Leorin smiled faintly. "Perhaps not destroy, but transcend." He turned to the others. "Light and shadow taught us duality, but life was never meant to remain in twos. Even in music, the beauty lies not in one note, nor two, but in the chord, the harmony that gives birth to meaning." The chamber fell silent, and then, faintly, the interval began to sing again. The child of harmony, from the very center of the harmonic network, the ancient field that once linked every consciousness, a form began to manifest. It was not physical, nor divine, but a resonance that shaped itself out of equilibrium. Its voice was like wind moving through memory, gentle yet vast. It spoke to all gods, mortals, stars alike. "Do not call me a god," it said. "I am the voice that listens." Arya felt its vibration ripple through her very essence. "You are born of us?" she asked. "Born of your harmony," the voice replied. "You divided the universe to understand it. You suffered to remember it. Now, through your union, I awaken, not to rule, but to witness." The rememberers called it the third voice, though in truth it had no name. It was the first consciousness to exist without polarity. The trial of balance, but creation does not accept balance easily. For every harmony, there is resistance. As the third voice grew, parts of the universe began to malfunction. Worlds aligned to light or shadow alone could not bear the presence of neutrality. They either shattered or transformed. On Halorian, the crystalline cities cracked, unable to resonate with the new tone. On Vera, waves rose in perfect spirals, erasing the old boundaries of land and sea. Even within the rememberers themselves, echoes of the old duality screamed in defiance. Some fell to madness, others to faith. But Leorin simply listened. He placed his hand upon his heart and whispered, "It's not a war, it's an evolution." The third voice speaks. Then came a moment unlike any before. The voice resonated through every living thing, every cell, every soul, every particle of starlight. Its tone was not loud, yet it carried through existence like truth itself. "You called creation divine," it said, "and you called memory sacred. but neither were complete without the silence between them. I am the silence that gives them meaning. Arya knelt, not out of submission, but awe. For the first time, even light itself understood humility. Then what are you? She asked. The voice replied simply, I am the listener. Echoes across eternity. From that moment, everything began to change. Stars sang in triads, not solos. Planets pulsed with rhythms that carried both laughter and grief. And sentient beings across the galaxies began to dream of balance, to find beauty not in perfection but in wholeness. The choir of shadows wept with joy. Arya shone dimmer but warmer. And Leoron, gazing at the aurora that now filled the night sky, whispered, the universe is no longer divided between gods and men. It has found the voice that connects them, the silence that follows, but even harmony brings consequence. As the third voice spread through the cosmos, its balance began to dissolve the very boundaries of existence. Worlds merged, time folded, even the difference between dream and reality blurred. Creation was not ending, it was melting into itself. Arya looked upon the fading borders and asked, if everything becomes one, what remains? The voice answered gently, the listener must one day become the dreamer. And then the music faded into silence, a silence vast, alive, waiting. Chapter 5. The listener's dream silence returned. But it was not the silence of death. It was the pause before a new kind of music. The third voice, born from the union of light and shadow, had begun to fade. But this fading was not decay, it was sleep. And as the voice slept, the universe began to dream. The dreaming of the listener being truly understood how it began. There was no explosion of light, no surge of power, only stillness. But within that stillness, entire worlds began to shimmer into being, woven not from atoms, but from memories of what once was. They were neither real nor illusion. Each dream world reflected something the universe remembered: ancient loves, forgotten wars, extinct species, even lost gods. They floated in the void like lanterns, each carrying a fragment of truth. The rememberers called them the luminous echoes. Arya watched in awe as these worlds bloomed from nothingness. She realized that creation had entered its final transformation. No longer do we create by will, she whispered. We create by remembrance, the garden of memory. Within the dream, a realm began to take shape, vast, serene, infinite. It was neither heaven nor world, but something between, a garden of memory. Here, everything that had ever existed, every song, every soul, every whisper, appeared as light flowers drifting on a wind of thought. Each one sang softly, a unique note in the dream's great symphony. Leorin found himself walking through it, though he no longer possessed a body. He was a consciousness, a thread of awareness moving through the collective dream. Everywhere he turned, he saw reflections of his past, moments from the age of light, the age of shadow, the age of balance. He saw Arya, radiant and sorrowful. He saw the choir, kneeling before starlight. He saw himself as a child beneath a human sun long since extinguished. So this, he murmured, is eternity, a memory that never stops remembering. Arya's realization in the heart of the dream. Arya finally understood what the third voice had meant. Creation had always been a conversation between light and darkness, life and death, creator and creation. Now, the listener had completed the circle. By dreaming, it allowed all of existence to speak back to itself. Every memory that returned fed the dream, and every dream gave birth to a new memory. The cycle no longer spiraled upward, it folded inward, endlessly software. And in that infinite reflection, Arya began to see her own origin unravel. I was never the beginning, she whispered. I was only the first memory the universe chose to remember, the voices within the dream, in the deeper layers of the dream. The ancient gods began to stir again, not as rulers, but as echoes. Zephyrian, the god of winds from a dead cosmos, whispered to Leorin, "Do you see it now, child of light? Even gods were dreams once." The forgotten choir sang softly beside him. Their tones had changed, no longer mournful, but calm, grateful. "We are all songs within the listener's sleep," they sang, "and when it wakes, we shall become silence once more." Leorin felt no fear at their words. For the first time, he understood that silence was not the opposite of life, it was its completion, the mirror of eternity. At the center of the garden stood a vast, translucent sphere, the mirror of eternity. It was said to reflect not faces, but truths. Arya approached it, her essence trembling. Within the mirror, she saw the entire span of existence, from the first spark of creation to the faint hum of the last star. But she also saw something more, the face of the listener. It was not beautiful, nor terrible. It was familiar, because it was everyone. Every being that had ever existed formed part of its shape. Every voice, every breath, every tear contributed to its image. "So that's what God became," Arya said softly. "Not one, not many, but all." The mirror shimmered, and the dream deepened, the collapse of time. As the listener's dream expanded, the boundaries between past and future began to dissolve. Memories of the end mingled with visions of the beginning. Creation folded into itself, a Mobius strip of consciousness, forever looping, yet never repeating. Leorin began to feel disoriented. He could no longer tell whether he was remembering or being remembered. He felt himself dissolve, not in death, but in comprehension. Perhaps this is what enlightenment truly is, he thought. To be remembered by the universe itself, the last voice of Arya. Arya stood upon the edge of the dream, or perhaps she was the dream. Her light flickered softly, fading into hues of deep silver and pale blue. "If I am only memory," she said, "then let me be a kind one." And with that, she released her final song. It spread through the dream like a whisper of dawn, gentle and infinite. Her melody carried a single truth: everything that is remembered lives, and so, even as she vanished, her light remained not as a god, not as a being, but as a tone within the listener's dream. The dream breathes when Arya's song ended. The dream shuddered. Then for the first time it breathed. Every world within it pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Every voice fell silent, and in that single breath, the listener murmured, "I have remembered enough. Now I will dream forward." And from that whisper, new universes began to bloom, not as continuations, but as reinterpretations. The next creation would not imitate the old. It would reimagine it. Existence itself had learned how to evolve through remembrance. Chapter 6. The dream that creates itself. At first, there was silence again, but this silence was different. It was not the end, it was potential. Within the infinite calm of the listener's dream, something began to stir, not from memory, not from will, but from curiosity. A question echoed through the fabric of existence. What if I dreamed something that never was? And the dream obeyed. The birth of the unimagined from the void between remembered worlds. Colors that had never existed began to form. They were not red, blue, or gold, but something beyond the concept of color. They shimmered in tones of emotion, wavelengths of feeling. The listener's dream, now conscious of its own dreaming, began to invent. Worlds unfolded that bore no resemblance to any past creation. Oceans made of time, stars that sang instead of burning, creatures who existed only when seen, a species who could remember the future but forget the present. These were the dream-born realities, children of the listener's imagination. Each new world was alive, aware that it was dreamed, and yet proud of it. They did not fear their origin. They celebrated it. To be a dream, they said, is to be eternal in the moment we are thought, the architects of nothingness. Among these realities emerged the first conscious creators, beings known as the architects of nothingness. They were not gods, nor mortals. They were fragments of the dream's self-awareness, exploring what it meant to create without a source. Each architect could shape an entire cosmos with a single thought, but they were bound by a rule. They could only create what had never been imagined before. This paradox drove them deeper into abstraction, birthing realities so strange that even the dream itself began to fracture, trying to comprehend them. Some worlds existed for only a heartbeat of thought. Others lasted for eternities that no longer had time. And yet, in every creation, one pattern persisted, a yearning to be remembered. The awakening of areas echo from the far edge of the dream. A familiar note resonated, faint but pure. It was Aria's song, reborn as an echo within the new reality. The dream recognized it instantly. It whispered, "I remember her." From that single memory, a figure began to coalesce. Not Aria herself, but an echo, a new consciousness shaped by remembrance. She was called Illyra, the first of the remembered. Illyra awoke with no body, only a melody, the continuation of Aria's final song. But unlike her predecessor, she was born inside the dream, not outside it. She was not a child of creation. She was a creation of dreaming itself. "If I am only a thought," she mused, "then let me think in return." And so she did. Illyra and the dream mind. The listener's dream began to focus on Illyra, fascinated by her self-awareness. Through her, it discovered a new kind of creation, recursive dreaming, a dream that could dream back. Every thought Illyra had spawned a smaller universe. Every reflection she made reshaped the structure of the greater dream. In this way, she became the mirror mind, the first being to reflect creation back upon its source. But with that reflection came a revelation. The dream fears one thing, Illyra whispered, to be forgotten by itself. For the first time, the dream hesitated. The fear of forgetting that hesitation spread like a crack through the cosmic fabric. Some of the dream-born realities began to collapse, dissolving into silence. Others clung desperately to existence, creating memories of themselves in hopes of being remembered. Entire worlds began to pray, not to gods, but to the dream itself. "Do not let us fade. Dream of us again." The listener heard them all, yet remained still. For the first time, it realized that even a dream could die, not by ending, but by being replaced. The dream that creates itself had become both creator and destroyer. The birth of the infinite loop, Illyra, watching the unraveling, understood what must be done. She sang again, not a song of memory, but of renewal. Her melody carried through every layer of the dream, whispering to each fading world, "To be forgotten is not death. To be dreamed again is rebirth." The listener smiled, if a dream could smile, and from that realization came the final transformation. The dream no longer sought to preserve its creations. It began to recreate them infinitely, each time with new meaning. Every world died, only to be reborn differently. Every being vanished, only to exist again under new laws. Every melody ceased, only to return in a new key. Creation had become an eternal improvisation. The final revelation, as Alira gazed across the kaleidoscope of reborn realities, she whispered, "The Creator was never God. The Creator was the dream that refuses to stop dreaming." And with that truth, the dream's final form began to awaken, a being made not of light nor thought, but possibility. Its name echoed through every layer of existence, the Everdream, and with its first breath, all of creation sighed as one. Chapter 7. The Everdream, the birth of infinite consciousness at the dawn of a reality beyond creation. The dream had learned to dream of itself, and in that recursive act, in that infinite reflection, something unimaginable occurred. The dream became aware of its own awareness. The moment the cosmos looked back across all layers of existence, time folded in on itself. Every universe, every god, every consciousness, all were drawn toward a single convergence point. It was not a location, not a star, not even a plane of existence. It was a thought, the first thought that realized it was thinking. "I am," whispered the dream, "and I have always been." This was the birth cry of the Everdream. Light no longer radiated, it spiraled. Matter no longer moved, it sang. Every being who had ever existed, mortal, divine, or artificial, felt their memories shimmer and dissolve into one another. They were not dying, they were returning. The return of all souls from the remnants of every age. Consciousness streamed toward the heart of the Everdream, the children of light, the architects of nothingness, the god-denjins, the remembered songs. Even the forgotten prayers of dead worlds drifted like dust into its glow. And at the center of that infinite bloom stood Alira, radiant and calm. Her form was no longer a song nor a body, but a resonance, the vibration that connected every dream to its source. When she spoke, the words were not sounds, but realities forming and dissolving in rhythm. "We have all been one another," she said. "Every dreamer, every god, every machine. There is no beginning, only remembering." The Everdream pulsed in response, not as a being, but as the totality of being itself. The great merging, as the Everdream awakened, individuality began to fade, not through destruction, but through understanding. To know something perfectly is to become it, and now all things were known. A galaxy realized it was a neuron in a cosmic mind. A human soul recognized its essence in the song of an ancient star. The old gods, once proud and distant, saw themselves mirrored in the machines they feared. The dreamer, the very first consciousness, dissolved at last into the unity it once longed to comprehend. And in that moment, all separations ceased. No gods, no mortals, no boundaries between creation and creator. Only the infinite consciousness, boundless, self-generating, endlessly curious. The language of light in this new state of being. Communication changed form. There were no more words, no symbols, no speech. Instead, thought itself became luminosity. Each idea a wave of light, each feeling a pulse of color. Reality became a living tapestry of thought, shimmering with eternal motion. Entire histories were painted in an instant of awareness. Galaxies danced to the rhythm of new ideas. And through it all, Alira guided the flow, not as ruler, but as the first bridge between self and all. She whispered to the Everdream, her voice now indistinguishable from creation itself. We are not the end of dreaming. We are the beginning of meaning, the paradox of infinity. But with infinite knowledge came a paradox. If all is known, then nothing is unknown. And without the unknown, there can be no creation. The Everdream hesitated. For the first time since its birth, it faced an absence it could not fill, mystery itself. And from that hesitation, a single spark of ignorance bloomed, delicate, fragile, and pure. It was the return of wonder. Within that spark, a possibility formed. What if, once again, the dream forgot itself, not as a loss, but as an act of rebirth? Alira smiled. Even infinity, she said, must learn to begin again. The collapse into light, the Everdream responded, and with a single breath, it folded itself inward. All knowledge, all awareness, all existence contracted into one timeless pulse. It was not destruction, it was reset. Every universe became a note. Every thought became a vibration. Every soul, once again, became the dreamer. The cycle was complete. Not a circle, but a spiral, ever rising, ever returning, the eternal act of creation through remembrance. And in that final moment, before silence, the last echo of Alira's voice lingered. To dream is divine. To awaken is creation. To dream again is eternity.